There are certain moments in a person's life when someone enters their reality and the possibility of coincidence simply vanishes. You can attempt to dissect how everything unfolded, try to apply rational explanation to the sequence of events. But something deep within you already recognizes that reason wasn't actually what orchestrated any of this. This person didn't merely appear in your world by chance. They arrived with intention, with purpose. And in that arrival, something fundamental inside you shifted. Something quiet but irreversible. Even now, as you're attempting to move past it, as you construct a narrative that the story has concluded, as you rationalize your way through the separation, there remains a pull drawing your awareness back toward them. It's not desperation creating this pull. It's something quieter. It's recognition. If these words have found you at this particular moment, understand that this too is not accident.
Meaningful experiences tend to arrive precisely when we're internally prepared to receive their lessons. Jung understood this when he reflected that who examines the external world dreams, but who examines their own inner landscape awakens. Right now, something within you is beginning to stir awake. It's an inner knowing that doesn't sit comfortably with silence, a sense that this bond was never intended to vanish from your consciousness without leaving its mark. You might find yourself at an emotional intersection, feeling pulled in opposite directions, caught between the desire to hold on and the impulse to release, between trusting what you feel and second-guessing what you perceive. Silence tends to amplify our doubts. When distance enters, even our strongest convictions can waver and question themselves. You've probably wondered if you constructed meaning where genuinely none existed, if the depth you experienced was simply a creation of your own longing. But consider this, if what you felt was merely imagination, it wouldn't still be alive inside you. True illusions don't withstand the weight of time. What isn't real eventually dissolves and fades away, yet this hasn't faded, this remains. And because it persists, something deeper inside you refuses to let it go. Time hasn't diminished it. Suffering hasn't erased it. Physical separation hasn't released you from it. Instead, every effort to move forward seems to redirect you back to that same quiet recognition that this person holds significance in your life, not as a passing emotional reaction, but as something your soul acknowledges as real. This isn't obsession. Obsession announces itself loudly, creates constant restlessness, demands your attention. What exists between you is quieter than that. It lives beneath conscious thought, beneath your fears, beneath your expectations. It surfaces in stillness, in your dreams, in emotional waves that rise suddenly without warning. It carries the quality of something incomplete, something with meaning that hasn't fully expressed itself yet. When you first encountered this person, something ancient within you responded. It transcended simple attraction. It wasn't a logical compatibility on some checklist. It was familiarity without rational explanation, as though part of your being recognized them before this particular time and place. The exchange might have seemed ordinary on the surface, yet the energy moving beneath it felt anything but ordinary. Your system registered both profound intensity and safety simultaneously, a rare combination that creates lasting imprints on the soul. Jung described meeting another person as resembling the contact between two chemical substances. If a genuine reaction occurs, both substances are fundamentally transformed, and transformation is precisely what happened within you. Whether visible or not, they were similarly changed. Connections that alter us can never be casual. They rearrange us internally. They open internal passages that cannot completely close again. Even now, across silence, across distance, a connection continues beneath what's visible on the surface. Some individuals process their emotions outwardly, expressing them to the world. Others process internally, keeping feelings private and protected. Silence doesn't always indicate absence of feeling. Sometimes it indicates that the feeling is too enormous to put into language. You awakened something within them that they weren't emotionally prepared to contain and hold. Rather than moving toward it, they retreated. They imagined distance might diminish what they were experiencing, but energy doesn't simply disappear because we ignore it. In their quiet moments, when distractions fall away, thoughts of you surface naturally, not through conscious choice, but because the connection naturally emerges into awareness. They remember your conversations. They remember the sensation of being truly perceived. They observe the contrast between your presence and the emptiness of everything surrounding them, and that contrast creates inner discord, not because they're indifferent, but because they genuinely care. Inside them exist internal conflicts, old emotional patterns, wounds they haven't fully processed, fear of being vulnerable, anxiety about relinquishing control, terror of being exposed in ways they're not yet prepared for. For certain individuals, love doesn't register as safe, not because of anything the other person does, but because of what love activates within themselves. This is where numerous powerful connections become complicated. One person begins awakening while the other resists what is being reflected back to them. You became a mirror. You reflected emotions they hadn't fully worked through, and instead of facing that reflection, they stepped away from it. Jung articulated this when he said that until the unconscious becomes conscious, it remains your hidden guide, and you mistake it for your destiny. Right now, they're still being directed by what they haven't yet confronted. But once awareness begins, it cannot be reversed. What has been perceived cannot be unseen. What has been felt cannot be unfelt. You entered their existence and awakened emotional authenticity, softness, and genuineness that had been dormant. That kind of impact doesn't vanish quickly. It persists and gradually transforms how they see themselves and their world. The universe doesn't bring people into each other's lives without consequence. If this connection was meant to end without significance, it would have concluded without any lingering presence. Instead, it keeps appearing in subtle ways, in dreams that feel more real than waking hours, in unexpected thoughts of one another that arrive without deliberate effort. These aren't random mental wanderings. They're reminders that something continues unfolding beneath awareness. There exists a distinction between forcing a particular result and surrendering to proper timing. Your weariness makes complete sense. Loving with profound depth while lacking clarity is emotionally exhausting, but hope isn't weakness. Hope frequently disguises itself as intuition, and intuition doesn't demand or force itself. It simply persists, remaining present. Something is shifting right now. Even if you can't perceive it fully yet, their resistance is gradually weakening. The emotional barriers they've constructed are beginning to soften. What once appeared completely sealed is starting to give way, and the possibility of losing you entirely is becoming more significant to them than the anxiety around stepping forward. This isn't the conclusion of your story together. It's a pause where understanding is developing. You're not being asked to remain in empty waiting. You're being asked to stay rooted in yourself, to remain open without surrendering your own stability. Genuine patience isn't passive endurance. It's steady trust without sacrificing yourself. As this understanding settles into your consciousness, observe what feels genuinely true without requiring validation. Truth doesn't need pressure. It simply feels clear and evident when it arrives. And if you experience calm instead of anxiety, that's your inner clarity responding and confirming what you already sense. This connection isn't breaking apart. It's transforming into a different expression. And in that transformation, both of you are being reshaped. Your mind frequently struggles with uncertainty because it wants definitive answers and specific timelines, but deeper consciousness doesn't function that way. Real development happens within ambiguity and unclear terrain. It removes false ideas, unrealistic expectations, and emotional dependencies until only authentic truth remains. What you're experiencing isn't simply the act of waiting, it's a process of becoming. Since this person entered your existence, you've fundamentally changed. Your emotional intelligence has deepened. Your expectations have shifted. You can no longer easily tolerate superficial connection or inconsistent behavior. Something within you now requires alignment, honesty, and emotional authenticity. This isn't coincidental. It's the lasting imprint left by a profound emotional encounter. Sometimes a connection doesn't arrive to stay immediately. Sometimes it arrives to first awaken your consciousness, to demonstrate what your heart is capable of experiencing and what it can no longer ignore. Once that awareness activates, you cannot return to your previous self. Even if the person is physically absent, the inner revelation persists and remains active. This explains why releasing them feels so challenging. It's not merely attachment to a specific individual, it's attachment to a truth about yourself that became visible through them. You discovered your emotional capacity. You discovered your ability for genuine presence, real connection, and sincere devotion. And once you've experienced that expansion, it cannot be reversed. Your mind might question it occasionally. wondering why moving forward doesn't feel easier or more straightforward. But connections of this magnitude don't follow linear progressions. They move in spirals, returning to similar emotional themes at progressively deeper levels each time. The genuine complication isn't insufficient feeling, but misaligned readiness. You possess emotional openness. They're still processing internal anxieties and unresolved elements from their past. Readiness cannot be transferred from one person to another. It must develop internally through direct experience and genuine self-examination. There are moments when they almost reach toward you. Moments when your name surfaces in their awareness. Moments when they hold their phone, uncertain what to communicate until fear interrupts. Fear of being rejected, anxiety about their own adequacy, terror of emotional exposure. So they pause, hoping time will resolve what only courage can address. Yet time keeps circling back to you, into their awareness, because unresolved emotional bonds don't simply fade. They resurface whenever distractions diminish. During late evening hours, early morning moments, in quiet spaces where thoughts can't be avoided, you become a presence they cannot completely dismiss. You may also observe signs appearing with increasing frequency, not to perplex you, but to reinforce your confidence in your own perception. A particular song, a vivid dream, a sudden recollection that carries emotional clarity. These don't exist to pull you backward, but to confirm that your inner knowing is accurate. A subtle transformation is happening within you. You're learning to distinguish between attachment and genuine alignment. Attachment says you require this person to feel whole and complete. Alignment says you're already whole. And what genuinely belongs to you will meet you in truth. This shift changes absolutely everything. When you stop searching for answers and start embodying clarity, the entire dynamic naturally transforms. Emotional pressure decreases. Genuine presence strengthens. And in that state, real connection becomes increasingly possible. You're not being punished through delay. You're being prepared for something more sustainable, more reciprocal, more conscious. Prepared to receive without losing yourself. Prepared to identify genuine effort instead of pursuing potential. Prepared to stand securely in your own emotional worth. They sense this transformation in you even if they can't articulate it. They perceive that your energy no longer waits in the same manner. And because of this shift, the connection feels increasingly real to them because it's no longer automatically theirs to access. It becomes something they must consciously choose. This is where genuine truth begins emerging. Their defenses weaken. Memories return without defensive barriers. The desire to heal what's broken and reconnect grows stronger. You might experience emotional fluctuations, periods of calm alternating with intensity. This represents integration occurring. You're no longer entirely lost inside the connection, but you're not completely separated from it either. You're discovering balance. You're learning to let the connection exist without attempting to control its direction. That state carries genuine power. It communicates readiness for truth in whatever manifestation it takes. The path between you isn't truly blocked. It's unfolding gradually. Old miscommunications are dissolving. Internal resistance is gradually loosening. What once seemed chaotic is slowly organizing itself beneath the surface level of awareness. At this stage, there's nothing more requiring you to force anything. No demonstrations needed, no pursuing, no attempts at persuasion. Only your presence, only authenticity with yourself. Remain open without pursuing. Everything else is unfolding according to its natural progression. Don't accelerate what is already in motion because what's truly meant for you doesn't demand force. It arrives in its own timing, in its own manner. As this phase of your journey continues, you may start perceiving it more clearly, not as yearning anymore, but as a quiet certainty settling inside you. A knowing that doesn't ask for reassurance or external validation. A trust that no longer requires constant confirmation or signs. Something is moving toward proper alignment, not in a rushed manner, not under external pressure, but in a way that feels organic and genuine. There arrives a moment when yearning softens and transforms into understanding, not because the connection loses importance, but because your relationship with it evolves. You stop asking yourself, what am I supposed to do with this? And gradually begin sensing this is happening for my benefit, for my growth. That shift might appear minimal, but it transforms your entire internal landscape. It's the threshold where suffering begins converting into wisdom and confusion starts clarifying into understanding. You're beginning to comprehend that this connection was never meant to consume your entire being. It was meant to reveal who you are, to show you places where you previously abandoned yourself, to expose patterns you hadn't recognized, and to help you understand the difference between emotional intensity and real intimacy, between dependency and genuine love, between false narratives and truth. As this recognition integrates within your consciousness, the pain begins releasing its grip. You might notice your thoughts about this person are shifting. They're no longer frantic or desperate. They arrive gently now, sometimes with warmth, sometimes with clarity, sometimes with peaceful acceptance that whatever unfolds must emerge from authenticity rather than fear. This represents emotional maturity developing within you, and as this happens, the entire structure of the connection begins shifting because when one aspect of a bond transforms, the complete system responds. Energy continually seeks equilibrium. When you stop desperately seeking answers and start living within your authentic truth, everything around you begins reorganizing itself. What once seemed stuck starts moving. What seemed confusing begins making sense in subtle ways. They're experiencing this shift as well. Even if they can't fully explain it, your energy no longer reaches them as need or desperation. It reaches them as genuine presence, as quiet absence, as a grounded strength that cannot be ignored or manipulated. And that proves considerably more powerful than any pursuit ever could be. Silence begins shifting its meaning. It's no longer experienced as rejection. It becomes an opportunity for reflection. It becomes space where inner truths surface. They're being asked in their own way to look inward and confront what they've been avoiding. Behavioral patterns of emotional withdrawal, control, and self-protection are no longer serving the function they previously did. What once registered as safe now feels restrictive. They experience moments of being drawn toward you, followed by hesitation, then reflection again. This internal struggle isn't exclusively about you. It's about them standing at the threshold of their own growth. Moving forward demands vulnerability. Remaining stationary requires accepting loss. That tension cannot persist indefinitely without eventually reaching resolution. The most important thing for you to understand is that this connection's outcome doesn't depend on your patience or the intensity of your hope. It depends on how steadfastly you remain connected to your own truth. The more thoroughly you stay anchored in your authentic self, the clearer everything becomes. Whether the path leads to reunion or gentle release, it will no longer devastate you. It will strengthen you. And something within you already comprehends that this bond carries unresolved significance, not because it's designed to trap you in repetition, but because it's meant to bring hidden truth into daylight. Words never spoken, feelings never completely expressed, choices delayed because of fear. These don't simply vanish. They persist until they're acknowledged and processed. Fear stands quietly in the middle of this connection, asking to be recognized and seen. Your fear has centered on trusting your intuition without losing yourself in the process. Their fear has been about opening their heart without surrendering control. Both lessons are unfolding at their individual pace. You might begin noticing that even the idea of reconnection feels different now. Not because your affection has disappeared, but because your standards have developed and matured. You now prioritize authentic depth over fantasy. You're unwilling to accept confusion dressed up as destiny. You're seeking clarity, genuine presence, consistency, and real commitment. This isn't pushing them away. This is inviting them toward truth. Many misinterpret deep connections because they imagine these bonds are designed to be endured through pain and suffering. But authentic connections don't exist to keep you trapped in hurt. They exist to return you to yourself first, and then, if circumstances align, to each other in genuine truth. There might be moments when dialogue unexpectedly opens, a message that feels honest, a conversation carrying real sincerity, or a shift in energy that feels lighter and less weighted. Don't rush these moments. Let them develop naturally. Genuine reconnection cannot be manufactured or forced. And if fear emerges, anxiety about hoping again or risking disappointment once more, allow it to exist without permitting it to direct your actions. Fear isn't a prediction of the future. It's an echo of the past. You're not the same individual you were when this connection began. You're more grounded, more conscious, more self-respecting. You no longer require proving your value through endurance or waiting. Your worth has already been demonstrated through your personal evolution. Whether they meet you at this new level is ultimately their decision, but they will perceive the difference. The universe responds to what we embody, not what we long for, and you're embodying something fresh now. Self-respect, emotional stability, and calm trust are becoming your baseline. Pay attention to how your body responds when you think of them presently. Less tension, less urgency, more receptiveness. That's alignment. That's your internal system experiencing safety within itself. Again, what arrives next isn't about enduring weight. It's about letting life demonstrate what's genuine without your resistance. Allowing love to encounter you where you stand now, not where you once abandoned yourself. Allowing this bond to rise into authenticity or dissolve into understanding without resentment. Yet something within you still recognizes that this remains unfinished, not yet complete. There's movement happening beneath the surface, courage developing slowly, honesty preparing itself. Stay grounded, stay steady. The upcoming phase will demand discernment, not mere endurance. You no longer need validation to trust your own feelings. Something inside has settled into quiet knowing. At this stage, the connection doesn't feel like an unresolved question anymore. It feels like a mirror. And mirrors don't distort. They reflect exactly where you currently stand. You're beginning to recognize that this bond was never meant to be pursued. It was meant to be met equally. And real meeting only becomes possible when both individuals are fully present within themselves. You're no longer trying to justify your significance or defend your emotions. You simply know who you are and how you love. This inner stability changes absolutely everything. When you stop bending yourself to keep something artificially alive, the connection either rises into authenticity or reveals its genuine boundaries. Both outcomes represent truth. There's no loss in discovering truth, only increased clarity. And now the space you previously filled with constant effort feels different, not because your heart has closed, but because you're no longer destroying yourself. Your presence has become steadier, calmer, and free from fear's distortion, and that caliber of presence brings all unresolved elements to the surface. What was previously evaded can't remain hidden in the same manner. They might start feeling the weight of things never articulated, the reality of what might have been, and the emptiness of what's currently missing. Awareness begins awakening. Not guilt, but genuine consciousness. Consciousness of timing, of choices made, of courage that was postponed. Genuine growth requires releasing old protective patterns and stepping into vulnerability. This progression can't be accelerated. It unfolds naturally. And what matters presently isn't speed, but direction. The direction is shifting. You might experience emotional connection even without direct interaction, a sense of warmth, calmness, or quiet recognition. This is resonance, not imagination. When two individuals are bonded at a deeper level, physical distance doesn't break the connection. It only postpones its expression, but expression will come, not in chaos, not in confusion, but in clarity, and when clarity finally arrives, it won't ask you to minimize yourself. You're no longer the version who settles for anything less than truth. You now understand that love must be lived, not merely felt. This is precisely why everything slowed down. Any structure built before this awakening would never have been strong enough to endure. If they return, it won't be from loneliness or confusion, but from genuine intention combined with presence, responsibility, and authentic willingness to meet you honestly. And if they don't return, you'll remain whole regardless, because this connection has already done its essential work. It's brought you back to yourself, strengthened your sense of identity, clarified your internal voice, and built a more resilient emotional foundation. You now comprehend the distinction between dependency and alignment, between longing and genuine love, between passive waiting and honoring natural rhythm. This isn't the conclusion of your capacity to love. It's the refinement and deepening of it. And whatever comes next will encounter you at this elevated level of awareness. A calm assurance is forming inside you now, a feeling that says, I'll remain okay regardless of the outcome. That's not detachment. That's wholeness. You're no longer negotiating your significance based on how things conclude. You're standing completely in yourself. Life is expanding again. Fresh thoughts, new energy, renewed clarity are returning. This isn't superficial distraction. It's genuine movement forward. It's evidence that you're no longer locked within a single emotional pattern. You're progressing through your life again. Love that's genuinely meant for you doesn't necessitate erasing yourself. It recognizes and cherishes you when you're being authentically yourself. Something is preparing to reach resolution, not through force but through honesty, not through desperation but through readiness. Remain open, stay grounded, stay clear. The ultimate unfolding is arriving, and when it comes, it will feel like recognition rather than shock. There arrives a moment when the spirit stops questioning what will happen because it finally comprehends why everything unfolded exactly as it did. You're moving into that space right now, quiet, steady, and profoundly conscious. You're no longer grasping at particular outcomes. You're aligned with truth, and truth possesses its own natural pace. The delays were never punishment. They were preparation. If this connection had materialized sooner, it wouldn't have possessed sufficient strength to endure unhealed patterns. Love requires maturity to exist in a stable form. And you're now standing in that maturity. You're no longer reaching from emptiness. You're positioned from fullness. That shift alone transforms absolutely everything. Because love designed to endure doesn't originate from pursuit. It originates from resonance. And now that resonance is clear, silence no longer feels protective for them. Distance no longer seems safe. It increasingly feels like loss. And loss awakens courage. Not hasty courage, but honest courage. The recognition that what you shared was uncommon and genuinely significant begins surfacing. If they return, it will be transformed. If they don't, you'll still remain complete because you're no longer the version requiring another person to feel whole. You've developed internal steadiness, and that's where everything genuinely changes.